another shark! Did you see that?
To start off this challenge, we're going to take a little trip down to the southwest corner of Sportsman's Paradise. Now we're going to be doing a whole lot of inshore fishing, none of that deep water stuff, but our goal is to catch as many of these species as possible. Now I've eliminated the ones we won't be able to catch in my area, but we're going to go for all the ones that are highlighted, and we're going to see just how many of them things we can catch in 4 days. I started off the first day after work at about 6 p.m. at this nice little swampy area, going for a few different species. I'm starting the day off by doing some bobber fishing using some night crawlers as bait and casting next to trees to try and catch the attention of some kind of bluegill or at least some kind of sunfish. I know there's a lot of varieties of sunfish, so that's probably what I'm going to catch with this bobber, but if I catch a bass, that'd be awesome too.
Gotcha. Aha. Alright, first species. Looks like a long-eared sunfish.
So that's the first species on the board. That's going to be a long-eared sunfish. I catch these things quite often, so I wasn't really too surprised when I caught this one. But it's really, really beautiful. They've got tons of different colors from oranges to blues and greens. And obviously they've got that long plate on the gill that looks kind of like an ear. And that's why they have the name long-eared sunfish, that little thing right there. But anyways, I'm going to take this guy home and actually put him in the front yard pond, just because he's a really pretty one. And I'll put him in that bait pond. But that's definitely a really cool first catch. Really pretty, nice on the eyes, but let's move on. The next thing I found was this little spider that tried to attack my bait whenever I switched to artificial. A little bit creepy if you don't like spiders, but then I went ahead and moved back on to live bait. Artificial just wasn't really working at the time. So I started to let the current take it, and suddenly got a little nibble, popped it around to get some attention, and then this happened.
Got him. Ooh. That's another long ear.
And this was after about 30 minutes of fishing. I was finally able to catch just one more, but it's the same species, so it doesn't really count towards an extra point, but I'm going to put him in the front pond too. It seemed like letting the current take it was the best approach because it would just let it slowly drift in front of them, and then they'd hit it and take it whenever they were ready. So I kept casting by this tree and letting the current drag it over to the branches, and then got this thing.
Ooh. Here we go. This is a red-eye sunfish. Got those real big mouths. I'm not going to keep this one. We're just going to go ahead and throw him back.
Now this fish has tons of common names like rock bass, warmouth, or goggle eye, but I just chose to go with red eye just because it was the simplest. That was real encouraging because now I know there's multiple species hanging out in the same spot, and I had a little bit more hope that I'd catch something else. So I did the same strategy and tried again.
Oh, yes, awesome. New species. Okay, it's tiny. Your standard. This is your standard largemouth bass. This one's an itty bitty one. Now I have a lot of these in the pond stocked already, so I'm not going to keep this one either. And I'm not putting him in the bait pond, so we're going to release him. But that is species number 3. All right, oh.
After that fish, it took me about an hour of catching nothing on the live bait to decide to switch over to some artificial and try my old faithful crappie tube in the red and white color. And after swatting some skeeters, this happened.
Oh, I caught a fish. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh, there's the tiniest bass. Whoa, look at the coloration on that dude.
Now, I originally thought it might have just been another largemouth bass that had some weird coloration, but after looking at this diagram, I realized this was actually a spotted bass. And even though my bait pond is only going to have bait fish, I decided to bring this guy home and put him in there just because I thought he was so cool looking. I think it's so pretty. Shout out props! Oh well. I think it's so pretty, I just want to let him go in the front pond, so just let him go. So that ended day 1 with a grand total of 4 different species, and we went into the next day. Now I didn't have work on day 2, so I went out to the gator infested bridge, but I didn't see any gators today, and it's probably because the water was rushing incredibly fast. It'd been really high, probably about 3 or 4 feet high. I tried to cast the lure out and jig around and stuff, but the current was moving so fast, I just don't think any fish were hanging out or wanting to eat. We had so much rain. They just really didn't have an appetite, so after about 30 minutes of fishing here, I packed it in and went to a different spot close by. Now this place is almost completely fresh water. It has a little bit of saltiness to it sometimes, but right now with all the rain, it was almost completely fresh. So my goal was to catch either a gar or a nice bluegill, and so that's what I started fishing for. Unfortunately, this spot would not pan out to be the best spot, and I didn't even get a single bite from anything, including like a crab or even some kind of small fish. It just was a really kind of a crummy day of fishing. Now, I fished this spot for a few hours, trying everything from worms to artificial again, casting in the boat launch area. I just could not get a fish to bite. Even when I saw them flapping around all over the place, they just would not bite any lures. It might have been because of the rain, maybe because of the cool water or something. I don't know, but this whole morning was kind of a very sucky trip. So I packed it in for the day and decided to try again that evening in another spot that I knew I'd be able to catch some fish at. Now, I had some buddies call me and they said they'd meet me out here at 6 o'clock. I was running a little bit late, but luckily for me, they were too. So we showed up about 6:20 and I decided to do a little bit of cast netting for bait. We're going to be doing some live bait fishing, trying to catch some gaff tops. That's what I know this spot has lots of. I had a whole video on that before. So I threw out a cast net in this area where lots of bait fish usually hang out in hopes of catching at least 1 or 2 different species of bait fish.
No, I'm stuck on the point.
So the first species I got out of the cast net was a pinfish, and I actually caught a few of these. These are decent bait, and I like to use them. I prefer mullet, but for right now, this is all that was moving around as far as bait goes. So I tossed those into the bucket and decided to go out and start catching some catfish. Now, I am not sponsored by Eagle Claw, but these laser sharp 5/0 size Circle C hooks are the best hooks I've ever used for live bait or chunk bait. It's great. I've caught all kinds of fish on them. So I tied that on, threw it out with a big weight as far as I could, and then set my pole in the rocks. I also grabbed another pole that was rigged with a micro setup to see if I could catch a little croaker off the edge, because I kind of catch them sometimes. But as I was retrieving and casting this lure out, I heard a sound that always gets me real excited.
Caleb, pop it. Oh snap, I thought that was Caleb's thing.
I thought my buddy had caught my line, but then turns out it was actually a fish, so I grabbed the pole real quick and started reeling in. Now with circle hooks, you don't have to set the hook. All you gotta do is reel, so it makes it super easy.
It ain't fighting hard, whatever it is. It's gonna be a little hard head, watch. Is that a, what is that? Is that a, no, what is that? Is that a trout? That's a speckled trout. That's my first trout ever. Dude, those teeth are gnarly. He's got one little snaggle tooth. Dude, my first trout.
I was super excited to catch my first ever trout, so I decided to try and measure it and see if I could keep it. Unfortunately, it was 1 inch too short, so I just snapped a quick pick and then threw him back in the water. The funny thing is, the water was a little bit shallower than I thought it was, so he started swimming back towards me instead.
Oh, he wants revenge.
After a little bit of encouragement to go back the other direction, he swam off for a second in the shallows and eventually swam back away. He was perfectly fine and made a full recovery. I just didn't have time to film it. Now, confidence was super high at this point because I just knocked out species number 6 with my first ever trout. So when my bell started ringing again, I jumped right back into action. And after a very short battle and my buddies hyping me up in the background, I ended up catching this little thing. My buddy had caught one of these just a minute ago, so we weren't too excited to see another one, but that is a new species for the list. And these little things are pretty good eating if you cook them right, but I was going to throw this one back. He was way too small to keep. And after getting a mouthful of catfish slime from the tail, I grabbed him, showed the camera real quick, and then released him. About 2 minutes before, my buddy had caught a shark, so when we saw this, we went nuts.
Another.
Oh, there's another shark.
And if you couldn't tell from the audio, we were super excited.
Ben, ben, ben.
Look at that!
Another one.
Now, since I have a 125-pound braid on my pole, they didn't get the net to me in time, but that was all right. I was able to flip him up over the rocks. I couldn't get any good video because my buddy Ben decided to step right in front of the camera whenever I was bringing it in. So this is the closest I could get after he moved. And that's species number 8, which is, I believe, a spinner shark, but you can correct me in the comments if I'm wrong. Now, we thought at first it might have been a black tip, but this spot on the bottom fin showed us that it probably was actually a spinner instead. After that big fight, I was really encouraged when I got hit yet again within another 20 minutes or so, and this one was putting up a heck of a fight. I had finally caught the species I came here for in the first place, which is a gaff-top sail catfish. I just call them gaff-tops. Let me tell you, these things put up a ton of fight for their size. I actually really enjoy fighting gaff-tops. It's a really fun time, and you can catch lots of these things out here. Unfortunately, that gaff-top took the last of my bait, so I had to go cast net for some more. I saw over by the rocks a school of mullet, so I made my throw.
Send it. Did you see that? I just landed right on top of him, and it was an absolute pancake.
I made an absolute sniper of a throw, got caught up on some rocks for a second, got scared, but luckily I was able to get out without tearing up my net, and after bringing it in, I got a few more species in this net. The first fish I found was not even a bait fish, it was a slippery little sheepshead. This thing kept flopping around, I couldn't hardly hold it still enough to get a good video of it, but once I did, I threw it back in the water because we're not using him as bait. Luckily for me, I found species number 11, which is a small mullet. These things are the best bait when you're out saltwater fishing or even freshwater fishing. Put these on a circle hook, you'll catch pretty much anything out there. I actually ended up catching quite a few of these little things. They were the perfect size for bait. We kept them alive, threw them out with the hook, just like we did with the other pinfish. We were able to catch quite a few fish with these little things. We needed just a little bit more bait, so I threw again at a school of fish I saw. This one did not open up properly, and it kind of turned into more of a banana shape or something. But ended up pulling it in and looking at what we had, and we had one new species in here as well as some old species. So we got some more pinfish and mullet, but the new species we got was this. This was a tiny gizzard shad, which made species number 12. With fresh bait secured, I hooked into another gaff top. This one's a little bit bigger, but it's not a new species, so it doesn't really count towards our score. But it was still nice to have, and he was definitely some good eat. Little did I know I was about to catch the craziest fish species of all time. This right here is called a long-nosed firefish, and it's an absolute pain to deal with. You have to be very careful.
Oh, okay. Now this is a very dangerous one. You gotta be careful how you lip them. All right. So lip him real quick.
Don't worry, I took it home and threw it in the trash. The actual species 13 is a blue crab. This one was really aggressive, chased my bait, and would not let go of it no matter how hard I tried to get him off. Eventually I had to kind of fling him off, and he scurried away out into the water. He was unharmed, don't worry guys. But this day was really beautiful. It was starting to get a little later, and I couldn't help but admire the clouds. Species number 14 is some unknown crab species. I saw this guy scurrying around on the rocks. Let me know in the comments what kind of species this is. As I got later, I got my spotlight out and found another thing hiding out in the water, which is species number 15, a hermit crab. There's a lot of these things swimming around. This one didn't want to come out of his shell, but I got a little bit of a glimpse at him. I put him back in the water and found the other one sitting on the rock. You can kind of see his legs sticking out of his shell. And with that final species, day 2 came to a close. Now day 3 starts at about 4 o'clock p.m. and it was pouring down rain. Luckily I was underneath some trees and able to kind of cast out a little bit. Today's goal again was to catch at least just one bluegill. That's all I needed, a bluegill, and then I can move on. Now I do also catch some bowfin here, and that's something I'd like to catch too, but the first thing I need is to catch a bluegill to use for bait. So I found this little spot over to the side. It was real clear, and I used my signature crappie tube to get another fish on the board.
Got him! Yes, sir. Okay, this is another goggle eye. Now, we have already caught one of these before, but he will make excellent bait. So that was awesome, finally.
After about an hour of getting soaking wet, I was finally able to secure a bait fish so I could start fishing for a bowfin or a catfish. That was the next plan. I still hadn't caught a bluegill though, so I threw my cast net out in an area that I figured they might be, just hoping I could catch just one single bluegill. I mean, come on, usually I can't stop catching them, but here I can't even catch one of them. So I threw my cast net out and started bringing it in. Unfortunately, all that seemed to be in this area was this little baby spotted bass. Now, still a cool little catch, but we already have him as a species, so he doesn't really help us in the challenge. The next thing I caught were these toads. Now, amphibians are technically semi-aquatic, so I'm counting them, but let me know in the comments if I was cheating here. I switched over to some live bait with a bobber and ended up hooking into this little thing.
Right there. Got him. All right. This is a red spotted sunfish.
I finally caught a new species from this location, and now it was time to move on to the other location. But I found this little thing sitting in the water and got to claim a free frog fishing lure. This is one of the perks about going to spots that are frequently fished. You get free fishing lures all the time. One of the not so great perks is you run the risk of stepping on these things. So please, if you're in an area, pick up your trash. Don't leave it out for everybody else to deal with. At this point, it was time for me to finally catch a bluegill. So I moved down the road a good bit. It's about 6:15 p.m. at this point, doing some more worm and bobber fishing, just trying and begging to get one single bite. Please, one bluegill. Come on, it shouldn't be this hard. But alas, I was fishing in vain. That was until I heard this sound. By the way it was biting, I was almost sure it was an alligator gar.
Ooh. I think it's a gar. Oh yeah, it's a gar. Looks like a good one. Oh yeah, that's a good one. Oh yeah. Oh, don't get me hung up. No!
He had gotten smart and got me tangled up in some weeds and was able to get the hook out of his mouth. So I had to take the bait back, clear the weeds off of it, and throw it back out. After I set that pole back down, I decided to go back and try to catch some more bluegill. I mean, come on, how hard could it be to catch one single bluegill? Those things are everywhere around here. Did I finally catch my bluegill? No. This is actually a shellcracker, also known as a red ear sunfish, and it is not the bluegill I was after. However, it is a new species, so I'm still kind of happy with it. I didn't need any more bait or anything, and I wasn't going to keep him, so I threw him back in the water and decided to fish in that same area. I know sometimes bluegill will school up with these fish, so I'm just hoping and praying that there's another one hiding there with him. Unfortunately, that was not the case, and I couldn't even catch another one of these fish. I did on the other side of the bank catch some other shellcrackers, but my phone had died at that point, and they weren't new species. My phone ended up dying, but my wife was able to video this moment. As I got this thing closer to shore, I realized something. The only way I was going to get this thing out the water is if I used the cast net rope like a noose, wrapped it around its neck, and then pulled it out of the water that way. He was barely hooked. Luckily, we got it around his neck just in time, got it underneath the little gills, so we were able to pull him all the way out of the water, and that made species number 19. And that was the last fish we caught at this spot. Growing up as a dinosaur kid, I loved anything to do with dinosaurs, and these fish look like aquatic dinosaurs. The teeth on these things are crazy. They have hard armor-like scales, And even though it's really difficult to clean these, I took this guy home to eat him. Let me tell you, we'll be doing some videos on how to cook gar, but if you cook it right, gar can be really delicious. It's just a very hard meat to get to, and after he slipped out of my hands a few times, I was eventually able to grab him.
There you go.
Good size alligator gar. He's gonna make a good meal, honestly. We might do a little cooking video on that, but that's a good size sucker right here. Lost him earlier, but we got him now.
Woo. Now, if you've never seen a gar up close, this is why I was so careful around it. These things are like tiny needles, and they got multiple rows of it. These things could tear your finger off. And with that prehistoric catch, that ended day 3. Day 4 started in an unlikely place, which is my backyard pond. When I started this challenge, I promised myself I would not go fishing in the backyard pond because catching fish back there is a little too easy. However, I could not catch a bluegill for anything. And if there's one thing on this earth I value more than my integrity, it's my ability to catch a dead gum bluegill. So I promised myself I would not leave this pond until I caught a bluegill. Now I also threw out a line to try and catch a yellow bullhead because I know I have them in here, but that would just be extra. I have to catch a bluegill, come on. And finally, after hours and hours of wasted time in other locations, within about 5 minutes I was able to catch the fabled Species 20 bluegill.
For so long. Oh, finally. A bluegill. I already made the thumbnail and it said over 20 because I was anticipating to catch a yellow bullhead. And I said that before I finished filming. So we really got to get something. Otherwise, I got to change the thumbnail. And even though it'd be easier to change the thumbnail, I think it'd be cooler if I caught a fish.
So I threw out some traps, loaded up with chicken, and went inside for about 30 minutes.
Guess you're gonna have to wait on that.
30 minutes later.
I don't have anything in here. What? Okay, guys. We caught a stinking turtle, man. I think we should put him in the bait pond up front. In fact, that's what I'm gonna do. And you know what? He's not the catfish I was looking for, but I'm glad I checked this trap. He would have drowned otherwise. Well, all right, we're gonna put him in the front yard pond. And the final aquatic animal is a red ear slider, and he will be able to go right under the water, and he has a new home in this pond where honestly he's got less predators to worry about, so that's cool.
I started this challenge targeting the ones in yellow, and even though I wasn't able to get all of them, I was actually able to get a good few of them, plus 10 that weren't even on this paper, so I count that as a major success. But what do you guys think? Should I go back and try it again sometime later? Let me know down in the comments. But as always, Jesus loves you, I love you, and have a great day.